Yes.
All right.
Okay. Well, welcome to our February Board of Education meeting. If you would all please join me in our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And welcome Mr. Kerry Schultz, who will give us a brief budget presentation.
Yeah. So since we're going to be, we had a budget workshop originally September 7th, and Kelly will be out of town, so we figured we'd do a quick glance. We're still working out a few of the budget numbers still, so I don't know. I think we can get this done in 15 minutes and get a good first glance at what we're looking at with the budget. I will tell you, I say this every year, I always gauge budget and the stress of it, whether I sleep or not. And I have slept well, except for this. You guys notice I got this new bracelet, don't be jealous. But, you know, going into each budget year, it's very, I think I was telling Julie about how I get like this anxiety because there's so many moving parts to a budget that you really can't control. You can't control state aid, you don't know where they're gonna come in. And especially with COVID and everything else, you don't know where tax receipts are coming in and how they're looking and what their thought process is when they first put those initial state aid runs out. So we received our first aid runs and I was actually pleasantly surprised. I'm not saying that we made out like bandits or we hit the jackpot, but we were pretty consistent. Each year we're probably seeing, this district only sees an increase of about anywhere from like $175,000 to $200,000, and that's usually tied to foundation aid or a few expense-based aids. And foundation aid, of course, was they were going to set it as a 3% increase across the board for all districts, and then we have, that's the major piece of aid, it's about $6.5 million, and then we have what it's called expense-based aids. That's your Boces. The more money you spend, the more money you get back. You don't get a full amount, but you get a percentage. I'll take transportation, for instance, around 55%. So if we spend more on transportation in 1 year, you're going to see another increase. You're going to see an increase in aid. We don't get all of it back, of course, but at least we get some of it. So looking at the budget this year, right out of the gate, we're willing to say, listen, 3% increase in foundation aid, which is fantastic. We did see that, about $185,000 probably. And we did see some increases in expense-based aids. We have increased expenses in the last year with Boces just by extra services. Not really on the special ed side, but more on the service side. So we're seeing a little increase there. They didn't hold anything back on the expense aid, but sometimes they have done that. So if we're 40% aidable on Boces, then we're getting our 40 cents on the dollar back next year. This is only like 4 or 5 slides, so I will say it's not, we haven't sat down as administrative group yet to say this is what we want for a budget. This is simply myself, my office, Kelly and I having some brief conversations about what we know right now as far as expenses go. We've talked very little about staffing. That's going to be with the board and with the administration going forward the next couple weeks. But right now we have basically an initial spending plan of about 378, about 21.4 million. About $330,000 increase from last year. That's not anything out of the ordinary. 1.5%, 6% increase in spending. We were a little over 2 last year. A little over 2%. So a lot of this is tied to contractual. You have all of your contracts that are going through each year, whether it be for DAFA or DESA or CSEA. So they have those increases already built in. You then get increasing costs too. Working out tax cap, and just a reminder, tax cap, we can only reach so high. Tax cap, we're usually around 1.8, 1.9. This year, there's a larger growth factor that was administered for the state, so that pushes our tax cap up even more to about 2.8%. Not saying we're going out for a 2.8%, but we were at a 1.5 last year. So Kelly and I just had a brief conversation. Let's see what a 1.5 looks like this year. And that's bringing us right about a balanced budget right now with this. There's still a few little things that we were trying to work out, and it's not on our end, it's really not work out, but waiting to see, and that would be Boces, CTE. I haven't gotten that number yet. I'm thinking it's probably around $280,000. I have budgeted $280,000. All of our long-term debt is in there. All the contractual increases for staffing is in there. Waiting on some supplies materials from elementary. Not pointing out, I'm really not. Crystal has hers in though. So, way to go.
I have them.
That's not going to be really that drastic to the budget. We have healthcare expenses already in, huge. That's about a little over about $3.5 million per year. Social Security, wages, all of that, ERS, TRS, all those big numbers are in there. So we're at this point, we're kind of like, okay, this looks pretty good so far. I'm not seeing anything that's going to break the bank or really spin this budget out of control at any point. So, like I said, just an initial look to see where things lay. 1.5% gives us basically a balanced budget right now. Just to give you an idea on state aid, like I was talking about earlier, foundation aid is our biggest, so $6.5 million. Here's our $190,000 increase. If you were to look at the state aid runs, you would probably gasp because there's actually a decrease in a lot of the aid. And the reason why is because we have long-term debt falling off. We're not spending the money on the debt, we're not going to get the aid on the debt, which is about 72, 73%. Now, these are state aid runs. If you look at the expense side, which we'll talk about at the next budget workshop, you're actually going to see an increase in debt service because the state doesn't know what we're doing with our debt yet. They don't know, based upon these runs, this last project that we're finishing up, this $9 million project, they have no idea. They have no idea if we're going to ban it, which is just a short-term note, or we're going to go to bond. They don't figure those numbers in here until we do what's called final cost reports. We won't get those final cost reports. If we get them in before December 31st, then we'll see a full year's worth of aid. I don't have any concerns that we won't get those in. Could we have them in July 1st? Maybe. I know we're working on the punch list right now. I don't think there's anything really big in there, but we have paving still. So paving is part of that $9 million project. So I kind of see that happening. We're not going to get it in July 1st. It's not going to hurt us. We're going to get it in prior to December 31st, and we'll get that full year's worth of aid. But they're not reflected in the aid runs. So don't worry about that. We will figure that in on the revenue side. But you're going to see the expense side when we go to look at the budget. It's much higher. But what we're going to do is we're going to do a ban, which is a short-term note, July 1st, to renew that debt, and then go long-term prior to December 31st.
So the state will eventually pick that up. This is not at all uncommon with capital projects, which is why you hear us talk about repeatedly the importance of planning long-term for a healthy cycle of capital projects so that you don't see huge fluctuations in anticipated aid based on when your debt is falling off or when you're incurring that. So again, this is something that we knew was coming. And it's very manageable.
I've gone back to, and just so I'm clear on it, one of the things is remembering, okay, have all this debt within the ban, which is the short-term note. It's like $600,000 between principal and interest. So I consulted with fiscal advisors to talk about how that flows. Went back to Questar 3, which is our state aid planning service through Boces. They're out of Albany. And we sat down for a good hour over the phone and talked about exactly how this is going to track. So I feel very confident about it. I was able to pull all the backup reports. The thing is the ST3, where the aid runs is basically kind of pulled from, don't talk to other reports through the state. So what we were experiencing is I'm looking at it saying, oh, wow, I got a lot more aid. They think we have a lot more debt than I'm really showing on our books. One's talking, not talking to the other. So we have it figured out. I'll show you that when we get to the revenue side on the 14th. I'll show you exactly how that flows. I'll have a separate line just for that aid. Everything else, kind of, we had an increase in high cost aid. And high cost aid, actually it's not high cost, it's excess cost right in here. This is based upon special ed. These are based upon students that are special education, higher than normal cost. There's a threshold that's set, that's high cost also. Transportation aid's a little higher also, we have that. Boces aid, just a tad higher. If you looked at the aid runs, they're forecasting in the $700,000 range for aid. We've never received that, we never will, not unless we put 10 more buses on the road and grab 300 more kids. But everything else, pretty status quo. But all in all, we did see an increase in aid. We're just seeing the decrease right here based upon that long-term data. Some of the major changes we're seeing, of course, is regular contractual salary increases. You see that every year. ERS, TRS increases. ERS is around 13%. TRS is around about 10%. It was around 9.2 last year, so not a huge increase. Fuel prices, well, you get to that in a second. Benefit costs. This district has not increased healthcare, both dental or medical, in I think 4 years. We will be seeing an increase in both of them next year, about 4% in each. That'll be an increase to the consumer, the employee, but also to the district. Each unit pays about 16%, anywhere from 16 to 20% in healthcare costs. Boces service costs, we have some more administrative costs that have gone up. More services, the more admin fee you pay. You do get about 40 cents on the dollar back from that though.
And Boces will be here at our next meeting to present the annual administrative Boces budget for us as well. So you have a better understanding of that piece.
Yeah, their Boces budget went up, I think it was 4.5%. They did not go, they were at a 0% increase last year and a very small increase the year before. So they did go up a little bit, not in everything, but across the, when they talk about they're talking about across the board, not that we buy into everything they offer, but across the board they're a little about 4.25% to 4.5% increase.
Yeah.
Biggest issue right now is fuel costs. I have no idea. We were probably, let's say heating fuel or diesel around 2.25. We use the Boces bid platform, so they take all the component districts, they do a massive bid for all of us. We commit to so many thousands of gallons of diesel fuel, so many thousands of gallons of heating fuel, and so we commit about 100,000 gallons of heating fuel. We just do that because we don't know what each winter is going to bring, and then I think diesel is around 36,000 gallons for the buses. What I've done is basically gone in and just doubled those prices per gallon. We went back to 2014, 2015, where prices were pretty high then. I think we were in probably 350 to 360 range a gallon. I've gone all the way up to 4.25 on some of these. So when you see the budget and you see that we've doubled in fuel, both in the transportation side and in the building side, that's why. I looked at the index last week. I think that was Wednesday, prior to everything that happened on Thursday with Ukraine and Russia, so I don't know where that's going to land, and no one really does know at this point. So that's going to be the tricky one. We tend to over budget. I mean, 100,000 gallons of heating fuel would probably be a very, very long, cold winter. This year we've had a pretty mild winter, so usually if we commit 100,000 gallons, we may only use 80,000 gallons. But that's the crystal ball I talk about every year. I don't know where it's going to land. You don't know what you're going to pay for heating prices or how much you're going to use in your own home next year. Same thing here. So that's the thing that kind of is really, really volatile right now. And I think we'll probably see the Boces bids come in the next couple of weeks. I don't know where it's going to land. They can easily reject all bids and wait and see what happens overseas and then rebid again. And we may just have them do that depending on what happens in the next couple of weeks. Next up, we will, like I said, we haven't really sat down and talked. Kelly and I have talked a couple times. I've had very, very brief conversations with Julie and her building. Even though Chris has got her stuff in time, we haven't really talked about her building that much either. But it's just very early. We'll start setting those meetings up. We have a meeting on the 14th of March. We'll have probably a lot more information, at least a lot more tied up by then. Evaluate personnel changes. I will say that this budget, anyone who's put a letter of retirement in, we have a replacement for them. We just automatically throw that back in just in case. So we'll discuss that, I guess, administratively. We'll discuss it with you guys as a board. But right now, it's not like we have to add them back into the budget. They're already there. State aid, the final state aid runs, I don't know if you're gonna get much better than this. It's very rare sometimes for the governor to say, all right, here are all the chips, take them now. Usually it's me hold back some and then we'll fight over it. I don't know if there's gonna be much fighting. I think the state aid runs that you see now is exactly where it's gonna land, which is fine, you know. As far as other state aid stuff, pre-K, no increase in pre-K at this point. They've got some other stuff, tax relief, there's about 20 bit of money for tax relief for homeowners. I don't know what exactly that means yet. I just saw a very brief description of it. I think it must be probably STAR reimbursements.
Yeah, there's been controversy over the past couple of years of what the state is going to do with that and the appropriateness of including that in the school state aid runs or not. So they've gone back and forth on that. There's been a lot of advocacy surrounding that. So I interpreted that the same way here.
Yeah, and they have, they've actually done some things with this budget too, because I consider this budget, I mean, some people may disagree with me, it's a little richer than what we're normally used to out of the gate. They're saying that tax receipts are much higher and reduce costs across the state. They're also putting money into their own reserves to help weather any storms like we have had with the pandemic or recession. So, and then we will meet again and go through that, and everything that we're doing is based upon mission, district goals, things like that. So. Next meeting is the 14th at 5.
Carrie, for that meeting, can we have an enrollment projection for next year? Let's see what we're looking at. I mean,
You can do a summary too in the last 3-4 years possibly.
That'd be
See,
great.
yeah,
Look at
we can do
trends.
that,
Yeah,
absolutely.
that'd be great.
Yeah, we will have, and probably with that, I'll probably show a little bit more detail with fuel prices, again, that being the volatile thing right now. In the budget, like I said, everyone is replaced as far as those who are retiring. I don't think we have anything, we've got a few things in there that they're looking at, but we'll discuss that administratively and then.
Yeah, from an instructional end, we'll talk about kind of our thoughts too about aligning programs, where we are headed in the future, particularly in the high school, with programs and things that we're looking to develop, and how staffing will play a role in that, really with minimal requests for, additional staffing, if any at all. And in addition to enrollment trends, we can also provide student-to-teacher ratios, anticipate student-to-teacher ratios across the board as well to help inform, questions you might have or support of the instructional side of the budget.
Yeah, we've usually too with the enrollment, we've given it to us by building before, just to
Yep.
do that.
Any other questions?
How much, I guess, I'm not sure the terminology, where we, generally you say your budget, you wanna have about 3% of it carried over, what, where we at?
I haven't done that much of an analysis yet. It's still, we usually wait until right about now as we're building the budget. I haven't gotten that far as looking at that. What we'll look at first is fuel costs. I don't have any concerns. We haven't overspent anything. We haven't done anything like that. I'm thinking we'll probably end up in the same boat, about 96% spent. So what we do right now is once we get the first draft kind of done, kind of go through the next month of doing that analysis, and I'll start forecasting each month where I think we're gonna land. And then we start looking at things within the budget and start yanking it out. If David needs some kind of equipment, or Greg, or maybe we're looking at Kristen Shearer just showed up, thanks for coming. Any materials that maybe she needs for next year, we will start evaluating that and so we can pull those out of the budget. But I don't have any, concerns that we're blowing anything out of the water within the current budget right now. So, but I'll have that for the next meeting.
In the prior year, we hit a threshold, right, where
We were much higher last year than we were in previous years. One of the things that in the year before was a little bit, I'm trying to think, so it feels like it's been 10 years. Last year, where we had to inflate, there were the 20% aid cuts. And we had built into the budget, we built all these safety nets. For the last 2 years, we've done that. So this year, I'm not worried about that. I don't see that happening. especially with the state having funding and being very upfront about it. So threshold, we were last year, we were more probably in the 93, 94% spending, rather than 96 or 97. Try to shoot for. Milder winter last year. You know, again, we still budgeted for that fuel cost. We spent some stuff out of the year, but I think in the spring we ended up taking some money and trying to offset this year's budget with some of those funding.
We had half your extracurriculars last year because it
Yeah.
didn't start until,
Right.
some of them didn't start at all.
Yep.
Reduced transportation.
Yeah, and we built a budget last year like we were gonna be full-time right now, you know, so that made a big difference also. You'll see that trend go back to that 96 or 97% spending per year. All right, so you guys talk about it again in a couple weeks.
Thanks, Kara. Thank you.
Thank you.
Who's up first?
I think buildings and grounds is next on the agenda.
Mr. Ciccio, you are up.
I give you these. I think I got one. I don't know.
That's okay. I can share it now.
Go, Harry. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. Are you gonna,
I'm right here.
Vanna White over here is gonna be pushing my button.
No,
This is the annual report for us. This is a designated areas that we have for cleaning, and you'll see it on your papers that you got there. It's all color coded, so it's a little easier to read there. During the daytime in the elementary, we have like 1.5 employees. I have an employee who works half the time here, part of the time up there. Depending on if we need her up there full time, we throw her up there all day. If we need her down here all day, we keep her down here. But combined, they're cleaning about 15,500 square feet. The night shift up there, it's about 20,000 square feet between the two of them, which is the orange and the blue areas. The Sherry does this area first thing in the morning, this in the afternoon, and then the other two take care of the other side of it once they come in at 3 o'clock. That's the elementary half of it. This is the high school, middle school sections. We got, like I said, the 2.5 employees. This depends on where I shift our one employee. They're split it up. It's about 30,000, a little over 30,000 square feet per employee on what they touch up, clean during the daytime. At night, I got 2 of them in the high school area and 2 of them in the middle school area. And it's roughly 39,000 square feet each that they do. So it's, they do quite a lot compared to what you would think they do. When you figure out all the footage of the school.
I will note too, like during the day, a lot of the cleaners that are on staff, either in the elementary or middle school, high school building, they can't get into the classrooms to clean. So they're basically, kind of floating. They're there for support when we need them. They can get into cafeterias and things like that when they're closed down, but your night crew gets the full access to the building. So their numbers may look a little higher, but they're focused more on just those cleaning areas.
This is the middle school, high school. This is just the other 2 employees that we have at night in this building, in the middle school area. They're roughly around 27,000 square feet, as you can tell. They do share areas together. One of them will actually sweep the whole thing while the other one runs the floor machine, and they swap off and on. They don't just stick with one thing. So they do work together, and which is better than what I've heard before, so. Capital project. We are finally getting very close to the end of that. We do have a meeting, I believe it's this Wednesday, with the architect. They're coming in to check the final punch list, see if there's anything else they need to add it up. I think most of it they got. I think there's just a couple things they're working on right now to finish up this week. CWC project, that's post, on hold until it gets to be better weather. Those guys, Boz, I wish they worked inside, because they are fabulous to work with, and some of the weather those guys are working in, I would hate to be those guys. So that'll be on hold till May, somewhere in May, I think is what they said they were coming back. Energy reduction through lighting, I'll show you this in a few minutes, that'll go along with this. We put the new SAP house out on the campus out here by the bus garage, you'll see that. If you go out there and look, we only have one connection left to make electrically, because that's 3-phase, which we had to do some digging for some of our pieces to find that, to make that work, so we could get the 3-phase stuff in there. Enhanced preventative maintenance, I'll show you that here in a little bit too, different things that we're gonna do. Review a possible EPC, that would be more Kerry, been dealing with them guys more than I have, so I don't know.
Yeah, let's talk real quick. The SAP House, I'll tell you, was funded by two pieces of funding streams. We had a very generous donation that you're approving this evening from an outside organization, and we also had Tina Minor James had written and received a grant from
Ellie Turner.
I was saying,
What's that?
Ellie Terrence, our current FFA.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I didn't know that.
Okay.
So the FFA, that's a lot of that was paid for with those funding streams. And then the EPC is something we've talked about for a while. Energy performance contract, that's kind of where they can come in and say, listen, we can replace some pretty good size items, which we talked about, like boilers, maybe windows, univents, things like that. Come in, do that, it's, those projects run, $1 million, $1.5 million, and then it's paid off through your energy reduction throughout the 18-year buyback or payoff. So we're just reviewing, we've talked about it a little bit, we have two agencies right now, just doing some preliminary work, we're looking at probably bringing in a third. And as far as the lighting, I will just note that David has kind of taken this initiative on without anyone pushing to do it, but a lot of your EPCs, they try to find lighting as the quickest payback, and they're very quick, a couple of years, some of them maybe a year. David and his crew have really taken initiative to look at what we have as old fixtures, old lighting, and replacing it in-house without having huge contracts set for them. So we'll go through those here in a second.
This is part of the Smith Pond, the CWC work. This is where they were just probably halfway through. They built this coffer dam here, which you can't really see very good. It's where the water comes in. The next picture will show it. Comes in. The sediment stops here. This is from over by the hospital. This is where this stream comes in. Goes into this area. Slows the water flow down. The sediment stops in there, and then it allows the cleaner water to go into the pond, which then in turn goes out into the river. That's the new bridge that they put in for the walkway around the Smith Pond. So if you want to walk on it sometime, I walked around it just to see what it was like when they were done. These are catch basins. This one here actually is it's a stormwater pollutant separator, which basically acts the same thing as the coffer dam does, but it does it in this unit. The only catch to this is that Jared and I will get to flip a coin to see who gets to crawl down inside of it and clean it out. So that's because they told us that you would have to clean the mud out of that certain area every year just to make sure it keeps flowing smoothly. So that's those. This is up behind elementary. We were trying to catch more water up by the elementary so it wasn't coming out in the parking lot quite so bad. We got everybody. They replaced one 8-inch pipe with two 6-inch pipes around here in this swale, so that they could try to catch more water. It seems to be working a little bit better. There's still an area up there that we do have an issue with, but they believe that's from an underground spring that is well below the level of this swale. Hey.
I didn't do it, I swear.
Right.
The original design on this too, I think, was basically the swale started where the loading dock is in the elementary, if you were to go right across from there.
It went all the way around where you couldn't see it.
We ended up adding, I think, a little bit of that. That was part of CWC, they picked up the cost for it.
This is out behind the bus garage. This is where the drainage came off the hill and they continued it around the bus garage. They did put drainage in here. And in turn, we did produce 2 more spots to park 2 different buses. So we had a little more room in the wintertime to plow around. So that was that end of it. That was just the bank. This is the lights in the elementary that were replaced. They were 2 U bulbs in these, which were 32 watts a piece. We got those replaced, went down to 40 watts a piece on these lights. We'll show you here, right here. There was 100 of them. The total cost when we bought them was $3,570. We have a savings every year now of $1,330. And this is based on NYSEG's average. As of right now, I'm sure that's going to go up because everything else is going up. So, but it'll take us about 2.7 years to end up paying those lights off with the savings. We replaced, there was a bunch of lights, and this is the middle school bridge. We had lights up there. We replaced those. There was only 10 of them, but they were at 175 watt metal halide bulbs. They cost us $13.90.
You did that.
I didn't even touch it though.
I didn't do it.
We dropped these down to 90 watts on LED, so it's a savings of $498. Take us about 2.8 years to pay these off.
Sorry. There you go. You're good.
This is what we're looking to do in the future. Around the high school and middle school area, the gymnasium area and the hallways, we're looking at replacing the 2x4s and the 2x2s that are there. Put them into the same style flat panel that the elementary has. The middle school, you can't spell either.
I did not, well.
I had to point to that. The outside perimeter, we have security lights on the outside that are recessed in the wall. Chris and I have started replacing those. We're looking at replacing the gym lights, middle school, high school. The lights that we have right now are 192 watts. We can change them down to 90 watts. They have a little sensor in them. After 5 minutes, they will drop down to 4.5% watts, 4.5 watts. After 30 minutes, they shut themselves off completely. When somebody walks back in, they automatically turn back on. So that would be a savings in the long run that way. High school, middle school entrance lighting, that would be out here along by the steps. We're looking at trying to do something there in the future with a future project. This is the outside. There's 25 of those lights on the outside of the middle school. It's $14.50. With that, we have a savings of $17.10 every year. So that's only just under a year that we're going to pay these back off again.
That's the perimeter lighting outside along where the track is, along the side of the building.
Which is to break down the hallways. If we do the hallways, there's 33 2x2s. We replace them with 33 LEDs. 69 2x4s, we replace them with those. The cost on that would be almost $6,000. We'd save $2,600 a year, so it'd be $2.3 years that we'd have, and we'd pay those lights back off as well. If we combine all these, once all the savings are done, every year we'd be saving a little over $6,000 in energy on that stuff.
That number doesn't include gym, anything
Correct.
that's for the high school gym.
So, this year, I started this with these guys. This is Scotty. He does most of our maintenance in the summertime on our univents. Our univents previously were, the filters were changed, and they were oiled. This year, from stuff that I've done in the past, you completely take the whole unit apart, blow all the dust out of it, which makes the heat exchange much better. And then, of course, we put new filters back in them, oil all the bearings. If things need to be changed, we change them then. But that helps with our heating, cuts down on our cost on that because it'll get better heat exchange. Every week, I have one of these guys, usually it's Scotty or Skip. We do certain checks on the elevator, on our generator. Usually I do that, the generator one, because there's stuff that I look for on the generators that I worked out over the hill. I still look so I can see what alarms come up. I can tell the guy when I call him. I know what it is, so I can just tell him what it is automatically. Monthly, we check the exit lights, CO2 sensors. We grease all the pumps, our circulating pumps, whatever, try to keep them so that the bearings on them don't go off so fast. We can do all kinds of preventative maintenance, but eventually things will wear out. It doesn't matter how much you prevent stuff, that you would just try to prolong the use of it, but it will wear out, so there is no, we check our emergency lighting. Every time there is a fuel delivery, the day after, I have one of the guys that go down and they'll change the fuel filters on the hot water tanks and the boilers. That gives it a day for when they dump the fuel in, what sediment might be in the bottom of the tank, gives it a chance to settle. But while it is settling, it's still going to pull it in, at least it catches it on the filter. We keep most of it out of our burners, helps prolong our fuel heating guns. Yearly, like I said, now we're going to be completely taking all the units apart. Twice a year, we're checking the exhaust fans, we replace any belts that are broke. I have those guys next week, as long as it warms up a little bit. They will be up on the roof, but it is rather cold up there if the wind starts blowing. So I do kind of work that out with them so they're not too cold. But in the spring, Carrie already touched on, is the paving in the front of the building and some of the back here. You're trying to get me through this really quick.
No, I'm not. I don't know how I click on each one.
Over the summertime, there are painting stuff that we want to do. There may be some landscaping stuff, that's stuff we're going to have to look at. Classroom space, we'll have to see when things change with COVID restrictions, which hopefully they're going to relax and stay that way, but I guess we're going to see. So,
If people know, we have a lot of classroom equipment, I think in 3 separate tractor trailers off-site because of the spacing. As they lift a lot of this, they start lifting more than just mask mandate. We're not going to be rushing out there to grab all this furniture to stuff it back in. We could easily do that, and then they go back and we have another outbreak and we have to go back. I think social distancing is going to continue anyways, probably for the rest of the year. So.
That's gonna take a lot of manpower, however,
Yes.
because we need to take an inventory of what is still in those containers, how well they have survived the past 2 years being in storage, what we can salvage, what we cannot. I anticipate that several of the classroom rugs that were rolled and stored in there may or may not be completely salvageable. So we need to take inventory of what's in there, determine what needs to be replaced, or is there an opportunity to redesign classroom spaces post-COVID? So that project alone will take a lot. We've also talked about, he mentioned the kind of painting, landscaping kind of things. We have some pretty significant repairs that need to be done in the auxiliary gym that were damages that were sustained prior to COVID on the walls in there. We have painting, we have peeling paint on the walls in the main gym and in different thresholds throughout the school. So it's not as simple as saying, we're gonna do some touch-up paint and bring furniture back. I don't want anyone to be led to believe it's going to take significant manpower this summer and bring back a lot of our ancillary summer staff to help out with that.
2 years ago, we had hired part-time custodial help to do painting at night. And they were painting around doorways and things like that, but we stopped this, correct?
We didn't do it, we had most of our, not most of our, we had 2 kids and an adult that was doing painting this summer.
But not during the year, school year.
Not during the school year.
They were doing it during the school year.
Oh, in the evenings during the school year?
Yes.
Correct, not currently doing it.
Because they were keeping up with that type of
Okay.
maintenance.
Yeah.
It was just something that
Well, we
was
still
done in the
had
past.
sufficient daylight to be able to do that, I would imagine. The
I'm
parts
sorry.
of the year where we still had sufficient daylight to be
Yes,
able to do that?
well, or the lights were on, because, you
Sure.
know, and they were just touching up the areas and keeping it looking pretty pristine.
Yeah, that's important.
What about, I know COVID has caused a change, Mr. Sisio, but what about ceiling tiles in some of the classrooms?
Usually if somebody reports to us that there's a mark or we'll immediately go change it. As long as the teacher or whatever tells us, we know it, we'll go change it instantly. If they don't tell us, then we kind of go room to room and find it, but it's, most of the time, they will tell us.
Are some out because of persistent leaks in the ceiling?
This hallway is, yes. If you're talking about the one right here in this hallway?
Yeah.
That's still from the building project. That's still something that we were looking at, they have to take care of, which is on their punch list to take care of. Their drain still leaks, even after they supposedly fixed it, it's still leaking. So that's part of the,
The next hallway over has it as well, right?
yes, yep. That
Same
was
issue?
all, paint, same issue on the roof drains, yep. So it was kind of worked backwards on how they did it, which I really didn't agree with, but they had done it before they said anything. So I can't really change it now unless we rip the whole roof back off, so. They said they have a way to fix it, so we're gonna trust it.
Do we know a timeline for that?
Nope, that's probably gonna be in the spring because they'll wait for the,
Yeah, they'll wait for that roof.
they'll wait for that roof to unthaw and whatever, so.
They did was they laid the roof, then they retrofitted the drains at
Right.
half the
Yes.
time. Yeah. So,
And they should have replaced the drains and then put the roof on, but
The other thing I was gonna say, I noticed you had a light replacement in the gyms, and I don't know if they've just come even further yet. The lights were replaced in the high school gym, I think, I know 6 or 7 years ago, and I know at least in the middle school gym, they do have a sensor that turns on and off, but I don't know, maybe it's been
Yeah.
disabled.
they do turn on and off, but it takes them an hour before they turn off.
Okay, so it's just it's a setting.
Mhm. Yep, so they're running at 192 watts for an hour, even when nobody's in there.
Okay,
So this type of a light that we're looking at would drop that down to 4.5 watts for another 25 minutes and then shut off completely. So you're dropping from 90 watts down to 4.5.
so the lights that they put in that are probably 6 years old maybe, those have to be thrown out completely, those are,
They would be removed, yeah. Because the lights that would be going in there are only 18 by 12 inches. And they'd be the same amount of light than what's already in there. They're just a smaller fixture. But they throw off just as much light as the bigger, as the bigger ones. They're just running at 90 watts instead of 192.
Seth was a perfect project.
yeah,
It was, okay.
yeah, it was just, I don't know, the technology has come that far, I don't know, it's just
Yeah,
surprising.
it really has.
Throw those off, yeah.
So.
Maybe we can give them to another school, because we go into a lot of these places. Can't see your hand in front of your face.
Any other questions? Well, thank you very much.
Thanks,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Mr. Verscore, transportation.
To be a little snippet of some of the training that drivers get.
I got it right here.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
I can just, yeah, mine's not. All right, statistics we just start out with. Right now we have a current fleet of 18, we're talking about the yellow buses, 44 passenger buses. They are all the yellow buses are leased, and they're on 2 9-year of 18, 2 9 years. We've got 9 in 3 years now, and 9 in the second year. In the second year. We also lease 1 wheelchair bus that's used for a designated run for out of district. That's a 23 passenger wheelchair. And that one's leased also, but at the end of that lease, it's anticipated unless we get something else or another need like that we will not need that lease anymore. And that one can go away. We have 5 vans right now in the fleet, 4 of them are DOT'd. Again, for that out of district run that we have, that they can be, sometimes can be run with a van depending on the needs. Our district is 192 square miles, which is some of the largest in the state here. I can't remember where it ranked exactly, but I know it's in the upper percentage of the state. With that, there's a lot of geographical challenges. The miles, obviously the terrain, the time the students are on a bus. Some of the things that we have to consider also, the routing and all, is like the way the terrain is. An example, those Vino Scotch Mountain, it's got 3 different cutbacks over it. We might have 1 student on each one of those roads, doesn't matter, you gotta cross every one of them. And routing can be a challenge that way. And there is no other way to run a different bus into it because like the ones that go out to Bovina can't just jump over there and grab one of those roads. So a lot of that puts a challenge to our district. We have 16 daily routes, 15 of them currently are in district and the 1 out of district. Pretty much geographically, we're down to where we're covering every road, and doesn't look like it can really, we're always assessing it, but it can be reduced a whole lot more. 2 daily Boces runs, we send the bus over in the morning with the full day students and the morning CTE students, and then midday we send the afternoon CTE students, and then when they return, they bring everybody back from the full day. Occasionally, and this is something with budgeting, and Carrie can tell you, we never know. We might have CSC placements put out of district, foster, homeless. There's so many different laws and regulations anymore that at any given time, students might be moved out of the district, not to our will or theirs, but the best places for them to be in school here, that's our obligation to go get them and bring them back in each day. These come and go, we never know. Sometimes they're short term, sometimes it's long term. We've had 2 and 3 at a time, which again means we've got to come up with a vehicle, come up with a driver, and make it work regardless. And then they go away just as fast sometimes. We average over 100 or 1,000 miles daily. In our 19A statistical report for the 2020 calendar year was 231,700 miles there.
that's also the year of the COVID, we shut down in March. We've been averaging a little bit more like 250, 260. And that number fluctuates because it depends on field trips and sports events and where we're traveling and how things go. But typically it's around 250,000. Of the 760 students assigned, or out of the 760 students that we have in middle school or K through 12, 732 of them are assigned to buses. That's averaging about 48 students per bus. A comfortable load is usually around 52, even though it's a 66 for children, 44 adults. You're talking K through 3. With the children, they're sitting 3 to a seat, adults sitting 2. Usually through K through 12, 52 is usually a full bus. Now, a lot of them are routed for more than that because we anticipate some are being transported and so forth, and we never know. Like I said, the AM loads are typically more than the afternoon loads. The afternoon loads, that gets into a whole different element. There's a lot of variables in there, especially with sports in the middle school. And each day, what is shown here on the statistics, there's about 200 changes out of the 320 kids that we compile daily. Julie's girls up there and Jane compile all the changes and notes from permanent, and it comes down to be 6 pages of changes along with the absentee list for just the elementary to track where these students are going. And out of the 200, I think I had 62% of the changes daily, or that 62% of the 320, 75 of them are off totally, either going home with somebody else or staying after for something else or being picked up, and the other, or are absent, and the other 125 out of that are switching buses. So that's also a responsibility on the driver and the teachers to comb through this list to see who's got to be on that isn't and who's off the bus, and to check that and compile it all before they leave. So that's something that we talk about in our kindergarten roundup and with parents and all. This has been a privilege, actually a fringe, if you want, for Delaware Academy, because most schools won't do it. Most of them have come to the point where they don't allow that. They say, one stop, pick it, and that's where it is if you're riding a bus. And they don't do this. It compiles a lot of hours, Julie can attest to. And there's a lot to the liabilities because there's a lot of changes and stuff that are happening, and we're constantly, and parents forget and so forth. And so it does encompass quite a bit there. Again, the loads are loaded with not everybody rides, especially with COVID. It's changed a lot of different things. Some people are self-transported, but any given day though, if we close early or something, all of a sudden we have students on the bus and they're full loads. So we have to have the seat, whether they use it or not, we're providing for it. Try to go backwards?
Yep, Luke just did it for you.
What's that?
Luke just did it for you.
Okay. So with that, I'm going to go with a day in the life of Delaware Academy Transportation. The morning pickup, the drivers are reporting to their, prior to their depart times to pre-trip the bus. We have buses leaving here at 6:10 in the morning. I have a couple pulling out of here. A couple pull out at 6:20. The bulk of them pull out usually around 6:35 to 6:40, all the way up until 7 o'clock. We have buses departing. They're anchoring back here at the high school at 7:35, or to be here by that time, and then at 7:40 at the elementary. Again, that built-in grace, school starts at 8:05, but now you have the homeroom time. We went earlier with that, which helped with the buses, especially with conditions and roads, but one of the issues was breakfast, when the breakfast program come on, and that allows students to come in, get settled, and so forth. And it does give us a buffer. The PM drop-off, the drivers report to the garage usually around 2 o'clock for the 2:20 lineup on the hill. pre-trip in the bus, checking out, making sure everything's set. They review the average 200 changes and address those that pertain. Along with that responsibility, they're also reviewing who's supposed to be on, who's off, who needs a visual, which any of the students that are 5th grade and under, 12 years or younger, it's required that they have a visual or no visual needed slip on file if we're allowed to drop them without an adult present or without some sign. So they need to know who they can and can't drop. If there's an order of protection, if there's a seatbelt permission form where some people insist that the child wears a seatbelt. There might be a special need, there might be an allergy, a medical condition or something that the driver needs to know about. All that needs to be reviewed, especially, and it makes it harder as a sub-driver to know each one of those runs and the different needs that are on each one of those. And then we also have the variables of the weather, construction on the road, student's behavior, sick or an upset student, passing motorists, parents not there, so forth. All right. Next. So one of the things I was going to review here, we changed a while ago, was pick up and drop off. Several years, or when I started, we had a lot more buses here in Rootstown, and one of the first things I started into was consolidating and standardizing the fleet, which allowed us to reduce the fleet quite significantly, which allowed the routes to get to be a little bit more efficient. With that, we used to use for the drop off in the or the afternoon, we used to load the students in the middle school and the elementary parking lots. We were able to move all the fleet up to the elementary and make a separate place for the high school, middle school, or the elementary drop off. I got it backwards here. What was happening is, let me start over with middle school, then high school. The front of the school was always an issue. We had many safety concerns because parents were coming and dropping, and it was kind of like the tuck and roll method. You know, parents would come, they couldn't wait to get them out. A student would grab something, start going. We watched, they get halfway, forget something, run back. They're running between buses, between other cars that were going. We have a unique situation with that medium out there. It is illegal to pass in that area, regardless of a medium there, even on a 4-lane highway. If a bus has a red light, you're to stop, regardless if it's got a medium. But the problem was, as a safety concern, we were watching it several times, kids falling and slipping in the line of traffic, so we were trying to separate that as much as we could. With that, we changed things around, changed the entranceway and got cars to get away from the buses and come up. In an ideal situation, most schools in planning, if they have the footprint or the real estate, they'll have 2 separate entrances. The buses will be one, and parents and drop-off will be totally different, where they never intermingle. We're not fortunate to have that, but we tried to do the best we could with what we have. So with that, we separated the buses and have them just dropping off in the front and trying to direct traffic as easy as we could along the side of the cafeteria, where the students could get off on the right side and have a sidewalk that would guide them right in without crossing any lanes or going between vehicles. Where I get the elementary, we changed the middle school bus stop to parent drop off only, and that was the same thing. Instead of parents coming up and dropping with buses up at the elementary, they were coming into the middle school ramp there, drop off on the hill, they could drop. We have aides and staff there to guide them all the way up through, and that kept it separated and much further safer that way, where the buses were independent. Some of the concerns that we have that I've heard over the different times are with congestion. the start of the school year, typically we have more parents bringing students in, especially the first couple of days, and it would get congested up there. It does usually clear itself out and everybody gets into a pattern where it goes better. With COVID, with the self-transport, a lot of that was unavoidable. There was a lot of people transporting and it was getting backed up. Plus, we're now allowing people into the building earlier where before they were able to drop and continue on. Same thing in the afternoon. We're not releasing the kids till after a certain time when the buses are loaded, where before they used to come up and get them and be going out at the same time, so that didn't back up. So that's why we get a line down while they're waiting until the buses are cleared. Other than that, what we used to always get is a real heavy last minute rush with a lot of people waiting till the last minute at 8 o'clock. We used to have a whole flux of cars come in because they were trying to beat the tardy line. But for the most part, it has worked a lot better and it has been safer. Dave made mention here back, I know 14, 15 years ago, we talked about opening this up with the CWC project and the stuff. We did put the line in there when they started clearing this out and all. They were just going to leave it. It was supposed to mount out to here. I was talking with Carrie because we've talked about this in the past, and we both thought that it'd be great if they could make that a flat surface in there, enough width for laning, and they did make that happen. And there in the back is the shed also for the vacuum pump and the tank where that's landed in the project. So you've heard about the national shortage of drivers. This is a major concern. Hearing this topic at all the conferences and publications, it dominates around, and it's a real problem in many districts. It's affecting education, extracurricular, sports, and so forth. There's problems with offering large sign-on bonuses and all because it ends up being union issues and the whole thing, because what I'm hearing is different places that are offering that, the people that are existing are all upset because they've been doing it and they're not getting, and they're hiring new people on. They're continually reviewing the concerns, pay rate, mandated training, the high standards of time for training, the length of time to obtain licenses prior to gaining income, and the 3 to 4 months. And sometimes in some places it was a 2-month wait just for a road test. Which brings me to talk about new driver training, what it does take. Cost of the driver.
Greg, just real quick to comment on that last slide, however, that, just to be clear, that has not hit Delaware Academy like it has hit other districts. We've been very fortunate to have been able to not have to pull back on athletic runs. We've been able to continue to support all of our transportation needs because we have not been a victim of this national shortage like other districts.
I have to say, we have a great crew, and with that great crew of drivers, it also self-supports and it helps recruit others because they're talking about it. It's
Right.
become a real team and like a family, and between the drivers and myself, if we've seen somebody or talking to somebody, we end up, discuss it with, because it's not easy becoming a driver, it's a lot of work, but it does help to have that teamwork and that networking that helps promote it. So, cost of the driver, to get their permit is $22.50, a road test is $40, CDL for the 8 years is $164.50 instead of the regular $64.50. It's not a whole lot of cost there. The training is not paid for. Each one of the drivers, before they can even really train with us or anything, has to do 9 of the 13 sections of the CDL manual on their own, study it, and get their permit. All the district training and required appointments, usually 50 to 80 hours or plus, maybe more, depending on what's going on. A lot of it is self-training, again, studying the books. A lot of times I'll send people back with different videos or different resources for videos and YouTube to help explain what's going on that I may have spent more time with one-on-one, and then we get together and go over it. And then they also have a 30-hour, once this is all done, that they have to do based on state ed, the basic course. So the district's cost for the pre-employment, a physical, and a physical within 30 days, because quite often they don't get a license within 30 days of as soon as we start, so they have to, before we can put them on, you have to have another physical, and you also have to have a pre-employment drug screen. It's a couple $100, fingerprinting's 107, it changes, it's around there. 30-hour basic course for Boces or COSER, the last I knew was $500. My time or a designee is 50+ hours, and now the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration has now got the ELDT, entry-level driver training requirements, which basically says that now you have to have a curriculum that's approved, and that you have to prove that you're teaching all the elements in that curriculum in order for someone to even get a road test. So now we have, which I document anyway what we're doing, but now I've got to go down through and build it according to what their specifications are and get certified myself with them to be able to certify a driver. So nobody can report to DMV if they don't have this certificate within 5 days of their road test. I think it's 5 days or a week, or they'll be denied. So now you can't just go and assume that they're trained. Somebody's got to certify that you've been trained before you go get the test. And again, it's one more mandate that was just put in February 7th of this month, that now that has to be trained, that you're proving not only the curriculum, but also so much road work and so forth before they'll even let you set or go for a road test. The training off the bus, again, is procedures, policies, and laws. The laws and rules and laws book here, all that stuff that are required that pertains to school bus. The regulations, DMV, DOT, SED requirements. Again, it's over 20 hours that would go through that, and again, a lot of it's even after hours for them to take and work on. And then training on the bus, the skills of the operation, getting familiar with the controls, pre-trip inspection, driving, the road test itself and all is quite often 30 hours and more. Again, some of that can vary as to what level somebody comes to and what skill level they have. If they've never been on a commercial truck or something, it may take a little bit longer. Others that are just looking for the endorsement and have had some experience, we can usually cruise through some of the stuff a little bit easier that they're knowledgeable already. So once they receive their license, the district now pays the sub-driver to learn and drive the routes with supervision. And typically what I do is I will send a driver or one of the new recruits out with new licensee out with one of my drivers to watch and observe what they're doing and worry about the technique, glean any evidence and wisdom that they can from them and their skill set. Again, bearing in mind what they've been taught. And then the next time they go out, whether it's the next day or the next trip, I have them switch places and let my driver work with them. I'll do this with several different drivers for a while and let them get familiar with it. And then I will go out with them again before I will cut them free and let them take a bus on their own. It gets them familiar with our district, it gets them familiar with actually doing things and not worrying about where the run goes and so forth, because there's somebody there that does know and is helping with that and the student management so they can blend it in. And then after that, we continue to monitor and the required documentation and testing and training. Annual defensive driving review, which is mandated by 19A, an annual driver record review, which is looking at the records and abstract. 4 hours of required state ed training. We have 2 different sessions of 2 hours That, again, that curriculum is developed by state ed that we're mandated to teach, and everybody has to attend it, and it's documented and recorded. Annual physical, and that's not only DOT, but it's also state ed required. Random drug and alcohol testing, DOT. And then every 2 years, they have a written test, just like their permit test that they have to do with 19A, biannual behind the wheel road test, which is just like a road test that they have to perform, and physical performance test, which is talking about their agility and skill set. They have to pull 125-pound weight, 30 feet, simulating pulling the student off the bus. They have to extricate themselves from the driver's seat, run the length of the bus back within 20 seconds, sit and go out the back door. There's a couple other skill sets in the driver's seat that they have to do, again, to all maintain. The physical performance test and all the SED classes have to be done by a school bus driver instructor, which I am, and the 19A review testing needs to be done by a certified 19A examiner. Again, I am. I do have another one on our staff who doesn't do it, but I typically, as a supervisor, take care of all that. But we try to keep a fail-safe, so if something happens or should I not be available, we can continue on without. It's a good buffer there. Here's the agencies, some of the report. All the vehicles are DOT inspected along with the records, and they're audited and reviewed. So every bus has a sticker on it, just like your inspection sticker, but this is only good for 6 months. And when it comes due, which is typically, they'll come prior to that, so about 5.5 month period, that bus will be there, it has to be put on the lift, and they go through the whole bus, every part of it, and review it and check it out, and basically are checking to see what our maintenance program is, how well the condition of the bus is. They also go through all the records, everything that we have, every log that the driver fills out, the daily logs. They audit all the mechanical paperwork and so forth, and go through it and sign off on it. And our garage or school district gets graded on that too, each year as to what our performance record is. And we've been very fortunate for several years. We've been above the 96% with several years with 100%. So we've got a fine program there, great mechanics. But again, it's part of the drivers, it's the whole program. DMV, the driver records are audited at least every 3 years, where all those tests that we have, they ask to see them. They either come, and now lately, they're making us scan them all in, and they all have to be within the date. If there's an annual review, it cannot be past 365 days. It has to be done prior to. The biennials have to be within 2 years. And this is done on every employee and every driver that we have. To be a 19A examiner, I have to be recertified annually to keep my credentials and take a class and so forth, and continual training. State ed, we're subject to audit. Again, the physical performance test and all the paperwork there. They're continuing to honor the training, and they put the curriculum that we teach, the 30-hour course and all the 2-hour courses. Again, have annual recertifications, keep credentials up to be an SBDI. All drivers have the 4 hours. Now, lately, the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration has got all drivers are required to do a drug and alcohol query. And all the random drug and alcohol testing is reported by our registered testing agency, and all the results are reported in. So if there's any negative results, that would go into the clearinghouse. And again, that was something I think I explained here a few months ago that's started so that there's no place you can hide in the United States, that if you apply for a job and you had a positive drug test in any area on your license, that's going to show up there. So prior to hiring a driver, not only do we do the drug test on them pre-employment, but I also have to query their license to see if there's any history in the back. And then we continue on to go, and now the new certification training required for the CDL, that's going to have to be all documented which it is, but it's gonna have to be in their form and, again, certified. So, some of the things looking to the future. Big talk, a lot of talk of electric vehicles. There's upcoming dates the governor's got, saying that by 2027, that you're not gonna be able to buy a no-NOx or anything with, and only purchase vehicles that have no NOx, basically electric vehicles, zero emissions. And by 2035, they're saying that all school buses will be electric. Now, that presents some issues, only because we go back to our terrain and so forth. In our terrain, in our district, the climate and the weather, with the statistics and the stuff that we're learning now on a school bus, or the range is around 100 miles before a charge, which that's on a good day, maybe 125 depending. The problem is recharging and how much time it takes. Going from place to place, there's going to be different companies and different ways to charge. Again, they're trying to work all this out, and they're going to have to. We're being told that under 32 degrees, you're not going to be able to charge, or it doesn't accept a charge well. That's going to be problematic for those buses that are outside and so forth in this district. And in some places, it's even a problem if it's really warm. Some of the things we need to look at, though.
Just to be clear on that piece, though, again, I don't want anyone in the public to be misled. This has not even gone to the legislature yet.
Right, this is a
Okay.
governor's proposition.
This is just kind of proposition that they're talking about. It is in proposal form. They have not done studies in rural areas yet. This is not close to becoming a reality, but it's something that people are hearing about in the news. So Greg just wanted to comment on that. So the pieces that he's offering for consideration are not true concerns at this point, nor is this something that we are even preparing to budget for right now.
And it's just laying the groundwork. This is where the frame and where they're looking to move in this direction.
Right.
And a couple realities. One of the things that we will be looking at is preparing the fleet for, or the garage and the infrastructure out there, the electric in the building for possible charging stations. That's something in maybe our next building project of carrying all that, even in the cars and in the public parking and staff parking, that we're gonna start seeing more. That a lot of times they want them to be in public government places where they're easily accessible to everybody. That's stuff that we're gonna have to start looking at and what it's gonna take to support this. Right now, that bus that's equivalent to what ours is, you're talking a bus that's around 135,000 now. They're saying it's $383,000. Now, there's grants out there and so forth for it, and the Volkswagen grant that you hear. The problem is a lot of them don't fit a lot of your situations. You have to have a 10-year-old bus that's a diesel to turn in to do it. We don't have that, so you don't qualify, to go, and it's replacing and rebuilding.
Greg, we have about one more minute. And again, what he's describing are not concerns at the present time.
I think that's what, that's all I have. Is there any questions?
Is it true that on taking a trip with a school bus, the drivers don't have navigational systems?
No, they don't have, they can use personal, but you gotta be careful because DOT regulates that they cannot have anything that is gonna distract them. We cannot install anything that's in there or in the person. They can have other people help them, assist them, and typically we work out the homework ahead of time so they know where they're going and so forth, but DOT is very strict on, if they even see that they have stuff in there for it, they
So that's a state mandate? Or about
DOT, New York State DOT, yes. because they're limiting distractions is what it is. Can't have cell phones, can't have stuff around now. I'm not saying that somebody else can't have it and be helping you or talking you through, but they don't want your eyes off of.
Thank you. Certainly gives us appreciation for everything drivers need to go through
Sure.
in order to be trusted and be put behind the wheel with our students. And the number of different requirements and certifications that Greg as a supervisor needs to consider to make sure the district remains in good standing. So, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to public comments. Public comments submitted to the district clerk prior to the board meeting will be read. The board will not respond to the comments and questions during the meeting, but may refer to the appropriate administration to follow up with the individual submitting the comment. The Board of Education believes that open communication with our parents, students, teachers, personnel, and district residents is very important. For this reason, the board sets aside time at the beginning and end of each regular meeting for public comment. However, in order to focus on tonight's previously scheduled agenda, as a general rule, the board will not be able to respond to your comments and questions at this time. We may refer your comments and questions to the administration for follow-up, or we may add the subject of your comments to the agenda of a future meeting. Either way, please be assured that we welcome and take your comments very seriously. The board asks each person to limit comments to not more than 2 minutes. In order for the district clerk to maintain accurate records of the meeting, each individual is requested to state his or her name and address. We have done. Move on to routine matters. A motion, please, to approve the minutes of the regular meeting held on January 24th, 2021. Kim, in a second?
Second?
Seth, thank you. Any questions or comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? And the motion is carried. Personnel recommendations. We're going to do these in a few different sections. First, we will do the resignation and regrettably the retirement of Peter Hannigan. A motion, please?
So moved.
See in a second? John, thank you. Any questions or comments?
Just a quick comment. Both of these are regrettable, certainly. Peter Hannigan in particular has put in over 30 years of service to our district. He is one of the hallmarks of our high school science department. Well loved, very well respected by students, parents, and his colleagues alike. He has just performed a number of different roles, both within the teacher union and within our school. He will be missed terribly, will be huge shoes to fill. So thank you, Peter, for your time and dedication, and enjoy this time in retirement to be joined by his wife.
Absolutely. All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? Okay, the motion is carried. Next, we will do the leave of absence. Rose Borowski, LTA, to take another position in the district, retroactive to January 21st, 2022 through June 30th. Motion, please.
So moved.
Seth, in a second.
Second.
Sean got that. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? Okay, the motion is carried. And Next, we will take a motion, please, for the appointment of Rose Borowski as a leave replacement for elementary grade 2.
So moved.
Step in a second.
Second.
Second, Lucy, thank you. Any questions or comments? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? Okay, the motion is carried. Next, we will go down through the athletic appointments, down through Ben Moise for modified baseball. Motion, please. Kim, and a second.
Second.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Okay, the motion is carried. Next, we will do the varsity baseball coaching appointments for Mr. Phil Newman and Mr. Sean Newman. A motion, please.
So moved.
Seth and Lucy, thank you. Any questions or comments? I will be abstaining from this vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? Okay, the motion is carried. Then we will, well, there are no, I have to make a motion if there's nothing to do.
You only approved through Ben Moise.
Oh,
Yeah, so that's last.
Yep,
Hey, so a question on, when someone is a non-certified long-term instructional sub, what can, that is for what?
Which one are you referring to, Seth?
It's the 5th one down under miscellaneous. And is that just for a period of time? That isn't a position or what?
Why would we be using that title? That's a good question. Let me think through this.
So she has a bachelor's degree, which would enable her to be a substitute, to actually teach provide instruction.
Jules, is this the individual you were referring to previously?
No.
Okay.
No, but she has a bachelor's degree, so we can hire her as a
In the
sub.
classroom, okay, all right. So this is a conversation that we had, I'm glad you brought this up. This is a conversation that we had about how we appoint subs in general. And we actually consulted with the New York State Certification Office to determine if we have a substitute teacher who has a track record of performing well in the classroom, and this is not related to this, this is just in general, who we want to be able to put in a classroom to sub as a teacher, not paying them the certified teacher rate because they lack certification, then we should be able to do that at that particular rate, not at the same rate as a certified teacher. There was a question that came up. It has been past practice that we wouldn't do that unless that individual held a bachelor's degree. And we had a person in particular who has been performing very well in the classroom, but does not have a bachelor's degree. And the question came up, can they substitute, be paid the non-certified rate, but be placed in the classroom? Historically, we have only allowed individuals with a bachelor's degree to do that. State Ed Certification Office said that it's not based on a college degree, it's based solely on certification. So at the discretion of building principals, for example, if they recommend that they know that this is somebody who is particularly talented and can be trusted in the classroom, there's no reason that not having a bachelor's degree should preclude them from doing that. So some of these newer people who are coming on, that one in particular that you brought up is the way that they had been appointed previously when we were using that as a practice or not. So it does not preclude us from putting an individual in a classroom should we need to have that purpose.
It would be a day-to-day sub, is that how?
It would be a day-to-day sub, not a
Not
long-term.
a long term, okay, I think what threw me off was the 3:1 to 6:30, it looked like,
During the time she's being appointed for. That she could,
okay.
That she's available to do that.
Why would then she be the only one that has a time period like that?
She's the new one as of right now. She's our new one.
Well,
And
yeah,
subs
but-
are appointed annually.
I know, but like, so the one above it's just effective. Why is there a range for one and not for another?
The one above it is an aide, not a sub.
What difference does that make? There's a custodial worker down there below that's got a range.
Because it's the difference between a probationary or permanent position versus substitute. The custodial worker is a substitute custodial worker.
Okay.
So they will appear after the 6:30. They'll appear actually after the 6-month period. Actually, wait, that's a substitute custodial worker. All right. So that's a temporary position.
I guess maybe to help clarify this, if somebody applies and they're a sub at the beginning of the school year, does it say September 1 to
6:30.
June 3rd, 6:30, or does it just say the whole, what's it say?
It'll give a range.
It does the range, still does the range?
Yeah.
Okay, all
Of
right,
the whole year.
yeah, but these people just applied
Subs are
just now.
appointed
They just
annually.
applied.
I get that, I
Okay.
get that, yeah. I mean, I think
Does that
back,
answer your question?
yeah, I mean, the degree thing is probably another conversation though, isn't it?
It is, and since we've achieved that clarification from state ed, we do have somebody who lacks a bachelor's degree, but who is allowed to sub in a classroom when we need that person to sub in there. Because she has a proven track record that's been observed by the building leader that she has been successful in that position. It also helps us to respond to the sub shortage and that kind of, those kind of issues.
Yeah, I guess it'd just be coming down to what would be our policy on when we would do that.
Right, and we do
We
not have
probably
a
do not wanna
policy.
do that, right, we don't have a policy, so
Correct.
that's what I think we should head for if we're gonna,
Mhm.
you know.
Yeah.
Okay, great, thanks for that clarification.
Will you note to bring that to policy committee, if that's something we want to consider?
motion please to approve Jennifer Sanford and Kurt Spangenberg.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Ellen, thank you. Any questions or comments? Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion is carried. A motion, please, to terminate the employment of a probationary employee from any and all positions held in the district effective January 21st, 2022.
So moved.
In a second?
Second.
Yep, thank you. Any questions or comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Okay, the motion is carried. A motion, please, to accept approve the financial report as submitted by the treasurer for December 31st, 2021. Okay, thank you. And a second?
Second.
Seth, thank you. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? The motion is carried. A motion, please, to accept the special education report from the Director of Special Education and Student Services for February 28th, 2022. So moved. And thank you. And a second?
Second.
Lucy, thank you. Any questions or comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Okay, the motion is carried. Principal reports. Mrs. Mabel.
We had, since the last meeting, we had a really nice fifth grade concert on February 17th. It was at 1 o'clock in the afternoon and it was down here in the auditorium. Kids did a great job. You have to remember that my orchestra and band that are in fifth grade, that usually would have had a year and a half of instruction, have only really had the first half of this year instruction because we didn't have band and orchestra last year at the elementary level. So they did a really nice job. It was a little different than the normal style of a concert. Did a really nice job with their pieces. And then we had, of course, the chorus, which is all of fifth grade, and they did a great job as well. New York State ELA testing will begin on March 29th. Pre-kindergarten pre-registration survey will be out on the website by the end of this week. The form will be online and will need to be completed by April 1st for anybody who's looking to have their 4-year-old. The student has to be 4 by December 1st. 4-year-old in our pre-K program next year. After April 1st, the following week will be April 4th through the 8th, and during that week, Mrs. Zimmerman and myself, Mr. Schultz, and the pre-K teacher, Mrs. Coleman, will do the lottery drawing for the 18 slots that we have available for next year. Also, there will be a note on the website by the end of the week for kindergarten registration. Our kindergarten registration this year is scheduled to be the 15th and 16th of March. The 15th and 16th are all we need. Usually it's a 3-day, but I'm kind of excited. This year we only need 2 days because we already have 18 students already registered. So they'll just be coming on in and we don't have to go through that all that paperwork with them again. So that'll be kind of nice. June mailed out packets today. And if you don't get a packet by the end of the week, look on that website and you'll have the information of how to get a hold of June. But you should probably have something by the end of the week. And the only other thing I have is that we had several professional developments that happened since our last meeting. 2 on priority standards, 1 on mystery science, 1 personalized learning, 1 on measurable goals, Eureka Math Squared, and a bookstore study on restorative circles. So we've had a busy month. Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Christopher.
Student enrollment updates. We've had 3 students transfer from other districts into grades 6, 7, and 10. Student successes, Ellie Terrence, as Mr. Ciccio had brought up, the SAP house was delivered, which houses the equipment that Ellie wrote the grant for FFA. And the equipment is part of a vacuum that creates a constant flow for the sap and syrup. We're just waiting for the electric to be hooked up to utilize that. And we had 3 students participate in an FFA competition. For 2 of the students in 6th and 7th grade, that was their first time competing. Ellie Terrence was an 11th grader that competed. She prepared a 6 to 8 minute speech on GMO crops, and she's applying to be the district president for FFA. Faculty and staff updates. In January, we had a few hours of a PD day where departments met and to gain a better understanding of where we're at currently in the district and where we would like to go department-wise. I met with the PD committee to discuss how PD is selected and the process through needs assessment, and it's identified. There was after-school PD through Ed Elements. Julie and I met with Nan Gazowski of DCMO Boces to discuss upcoming PD offerings. And Amy Linder and her husband Ben Patton welcomed Grant Benjamin Patton on January 27th. Such a cutie, adorable picture. And Mr. Ferrara, who is here tonight, was recognized as the NYSA, very long A, Athletic Administrator of the Year. Congratulations again. As Ms. Zimmerman had stated, Mr. Hannigan announced his retirement coming in June. And on February 11th, Ms. Haight's sports marketing class visited the Delco storefront down in Delhi for a lesson in production and building that community connection. Some events that we have coming up on Friday this week, State Trooper Alan Ferreira will present forensic evidence to Mr. Moise's biology class. We have NICEAD 3 through 8 testing, 6 through 8 in this building, beginning on March 29th. And the Boces Roadshow are scheduled for March 10th, and they'll be presenting to 8th and 10th grade students. And the senior trip proposal was submitted, and we're hoping to have the seniors present that proposal at the next board meeting. Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Personnel reports. Mr. Ferrara.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you, Mrs. Trask, for the recognition. I don't know if you saw me sink down in my chair back there, but Mrs. Zimmerman has been trying to get me to wear my pride proudly. It's New York State Athletic Administrators Association, that's all those A's she was referring to, gave me the Chapter 4 award. I was fortunate enough to get to go to a luncheon down in Union Endicott with Mrs. Zimmerman, and I think I owe her a thank you. She gave a wonderful, lengthy speech on my behalf, and it must have took hours because there was details that I've never shared with her from my past that she brought up. As we creep towards the end of COVID sports and masked sports, I would never have survived the 2 years, particularly this year, Mrs. Zimmerman guiding me through COVID, which was painful and arduous at times, so I share that award with her. It's half hers. She has helped me survive this COVID pandemic, so I appreciate the honor. It's all of our honors. On to sports. We'll wrap up the winter season. Girls basketball had a great year again. They started off 1-2, won 17 straight after that to lead themselves to the MAC championship game. Since the MAC championship game, they have won 2 consecutive sectional games. They have a sectional semifinal coming up. Want to do the honor of the date and time?
Tomorrow.
At Portland, at 7 p.m. Tell everybody they got to be there.
Everyone, you have to be there.
Girls basketball tomorrow, 7 p.m. SUNY Cortland. Boys basketball season just ended this past weekend. They made it to the sectional quarterfinals. We traveled out to Newfield to play a very formidable opponent and came up just short. They again put together another fantastic season. Mr. Pecori with the wrestling team attended the state tournament for the 5th consecutive year. That's not easy to do in the sport of wrestling. He seems to get one of his athletes there one way or another every single year. He just took one up this weekend. They had a great performance. The athlete came up 1 round short of placing and being in the top 6 in New York State. He was a very solid year in performance by both the athlete, Mr. Pecori, and the rest of his teammates. They also took 2nd in Section 4. They wrestled Tioga for the Section 4 team championship, lost to Tioga, who went on to win the New York State championship the following weekend. But what a great year to think of ourselves as the 2nd best team in Section 4 to the eventual state champions. Terry Lake's done another great job with our indoor track team. They will be going to Staten Island to the state championships March 5th. Ellie Lees will be competing in a running event, and Vincent Van Maren will be pole vaulting, both chasing after that elusive New York State title. That is all I have. I am much shorter than Mr. Versport tonight. Any questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Shazio, I did not know if you had anything else.
Not really. The only thing I would tell you is, I got, I guess something I didn't add, is, kind of taking an active approach for this a little bit for later on. I have Chris DeMayo, who is now starting, this week he's going to an art flash training course, which I will go with him as well. Then the next 2 weeks from them, he'll be in an asbestos inspector course. Once that is done, we're gonna try to enroll him in an inspector management planner course, and then a Class D, or a Class B fuel tank operator course. Because we're trying to get him a little bit ahead, so if something ever happens, like we're not here or something, then it can be taken care of. So other than that, I'm good.
So it's not just our teaching staff who we commit to growing and retaining. It is throughout the organization. So thank you for your leadership in that, making sure he gets what he needs. Mr. Schultz.
Just two things. I had a conference call today with a company called BKS Investment Services. They are interested in looking at helping us write an RFP for the A.L. Kellogg Scholarship Fund. Probably the next 2 weeks we'll have a formal proposal for the board. We sat and talked for probably a good hour about what I thought the board wanted to see, what kind of expectations to lay out within the proposal so you could review that. From there, if accepted, we'd go out for an RFP for investment management for the A.L. Kellogg Fund. And then from there, probably pick 4 applicants for the board to review and have probably a formal interview process. So once the next board meeting, I'll have that proposal for you we can discuss. We are looking at adding, at no cost to the district, I want to get that out front, this is a voluntary service, if employees so wish to, it would be it's a medical insurance for eyewear, for contacts, vision, vision test appointments, glasses, lenses, things like that. Boces has offered it, they're probably in the second year of doing it. We started reviewing and looking to probably roll something out on July 1st. So this is above and beyond what we, like I said, completely different piece than what we currently offer. We would not be putting anything, it's not a contractual, it's all voluntary by employee. If I'm not mistaken, the price runs around $13 to $14 for a family plan, and it's actually very good coverage. I actually use it, my wife has it, and it's very good. So we're looking to, it's gonna take a little time to roll out. I will speak to the unions about it individually as we go forward, further. We will have information sessions for staff who are interested, so we'll start that process. That's all I have.
Great, thank you. Well, Christine Miller, Food Services.
Good evening. I'll be even briefer than Jeff and Greg put together. So I just want to talk a little bit about our numbers because this February is generally our shortest month with serving days in the entire year. So we had 16 serving days and we had 3,510 breakfasts and 2,660 of those again were elementary breakfast in the classroom, and I say every single month it just boggles my mind that these kids just want to be here, they want to eat breakfast in school and lunch. Our lunch totals were 6,267, and that is combined with both buildings. I just wanted to mention at our last board meeting we were asked about our foam products, and that ended in January, and I've finally been able to secure all of our products. It is very extremely difficult to try to get all our products in every single week because of the supply shortages that are out there. So I was trying to get us one step ahead of, running out of foam trays or foam bowls or foam cups. So we've finally gotten there. And I just can't thank my staff enough that when we have new product coming in, we want it to look the same every single time we serve it, even if it is a different product, because the students will notice. And we really don't want them to because we want to keep our participation up. So I just can't thank them enough working with what we have. So that's really all I have. Any questions, comments? No?
Thank you.
Can I jump? Chris made a good point. Chris, it's not. We're actually looking at something very similar for building the grounds right now, because a lot of the product that we're doing, we're looking at purchasing now, only because of supply chain, lack of, I've heard that there's supposedly tractor trailers that may head to DC soon. Protest the vaccination, just like Canada, so we're being a little bit more proactive building one too.
Special education and student services.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I just want to start by thanking my colleagues in Buildings and Grounds and Transportation. They are the partners to special education for sure, and my program doesn't run well without them. So I just want to, Greg knows how much I appreciate him and Dave as well. So student services, Brilliant Pathways underway, pretty exciting stuff. We had 41. Student leaders were trained with the first essential element in leadership, and then they turned around and presented to our 5th graders, 44 5th graders, as well as our 8th graders. Really exciting stuff. Did you have fun?
I did.
So we're excited for the presentations in March. We're moving into teamwork. We are meeting with Hannah Corkery, who is our liaison for Brilliant Pathways on Thursday. She zooms in with our adult mentor team once a month. So I'm excited that that's underway. We're also moving forward with our individual mentoring and small group mentoring. So that's starting in the elementary and in the middle school. Super fun stuff, or at least I think so. Before break, they did a really nice job. Then I guess I wanted to let you know that 32 students are going to be participating in AP exams starting in May. Pretty exciting stuff, I think. We've got a high participation in those 6 exams, so I'm excited. And Crystal and I have been working on teaming with the teachers and making sure that we're all set, verifying rosters and getting all that done. Carrie, we're excited to read that bill. We have several parent student nights. We had talked about early on last year that we were going to start to provide some parent universities, and our first ones are coming up in actually March. There are 4 of them. So the first one is an NCAA presentation on NCAA eligibility and the college recruiting process. Delaware College and a panel of their student athletes that are local as well as from afar. We're going to do a really cool panel discussion. I don't know if any of you follow NCAA sports, but they did just drop the requirement for testing, just like many of our colleges did. So Division I and Division II athletes now will be held responsible for taking the ACT or the SAT and the score on that. So lots more information about that will come, but I'm excited to share that information with you. We are beginning our parent nights for 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, and our 8th graders. So you'll definitely be getting some more information. We're meeting with counselors tomorrow. Parent letters and things like that are going to go out. But they are nights that start at 6:30. They will be in person in the auditorium. So that's pretty cool. The last student services thing is we are conducting interviews for our middle school counseling position on Wednesday. We're hoping to get a really good candidate. We've waited a long time, and we're encouraged by this round. In special education, we are surviving our audit. State Ed has asked us to volunteer in a fun exercise of an audit. It's indicator 11, which is timely initial evaluation. So we had to pull some data and send that to the state, and that we should be all set with that actually quite soon this week. We've completed about 40% of our annual reviews to date, which I'm pretty excited about. Since moving to anniversary dates for annual reviews, we've been able to spread it out a little bit more throughout this year, so about 40%, which also includes students moving in, initial evaluations, so it's not just our standard evaluations. PD, along with Julie, we were talking about, we've completed our measurable goals PD. We did a consultant teacher collaboration, which we're taking all of our special ed teachers and really taking a look at how we're using a consultant teaching program in here at Delaware Academy. So indirect and direct, it was a really great conversation of which our next stage is to open that up to gen ed teachers so we can begin to partner with them. Testing accommodations, Meg Ainsworth and I participated in a testing accommodations workshop that we're going to turn around and train a trainer with our teachers. Just another reminder of all the things that we need to do and to do it well. We continue to do that. We had 2 students participate in the adaptive sports snowshoeing and sledding program that Delhi College invited us to. That was really cool, lots of great pictures, and they really enjoyed that a lot. And then I continue to progress towards my teacher and counselor observations, so they're all going really well. And that's it. Any questions for me? I'm excited to spend time with you next month, so it's okay if you don't have questions today.
Good, thank you.
Thanks. A lot going on.
Technology, Mr. Parziva.
So last month you really got the brunt of what my department's been up to. Since then, we've done regional technology planning workshops with DCNL Boces. We held a local tech committee meeting where we're really trying to set and narrow down goals. We'll be setting more meetings where we can get more. And unfortunately, I didn't know they had a faculty meeting at the same time as that meeting, so we're going to follow up with other meetings that faculty will be invited to attend and provide input so that it really meets our instructional goals for technology on that side. And that's really the brunt of what I've been up to on that side. We got another meeting coming up Thursday from the regional planning side, and then we'll be just rolling in meetings. It's kind of that planning time of year before end of the year and collecting devices and ramping up for next year. So that's the brunt of what we're up to. Any questions? All right, thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Mr. Rochford, did you have anything else? Thank you. Mrs. Zimmerman.
We've been busy. Holy cow, this team is amazing. And I'm bringing this energy to kind of re-energize us. I know we've been sitting here for a little while. I'll apologize in advance. I do have a number of things to get through with you tonight, the majority of which, though, are in your folders. So I'm going to just bring your attention to them to do a light touch, perhaps give our board members a little bit of homework that we can follow up and correspond with. So the first one has to do, we've had a lot of conversations surrounding our elementary playground. And what you'll find in your packets are 2 quotes from the 2 different vendors that we went through. The primary difference in the bottom line on these pertains to the type of what do you even call, what the playground sits on. The type of surfacing, yes. The proposal for landscape structures, they only deal with a solid surface. So, and that is, there's quite a price tag associated with that. The other one deals in both the rubber mulch, and I know that we have been asked to look into kind of the pros, cons, and any health risks that could be associated with rubber mulch based on some of the press and negative press that has received in the past that it could possibly be carcinogenic. And so also in your, we tried to, thank you, Harry, he looked up some research that was done by the EPA and CDC. We were careful not to pull out sources that may have had been authored by vendors of rubber mulch, for example. And so we offer these to you for your review because we'd like to move forward with securing one of these vendors to move forward. But if there are any outstanding concerns at all regarding any of the materials that are used, I encourage the board to have an open conversation about that. So I know this is the first time that you're seeing these. I'm not gonna ask you to read them right here and render a decision. But rather, I will encourage you to read through those and then we can continue to have dialogue as we move forward, whether that be through email or otherwise, so that we don't lose a lot of time associated with this project.
One question I might have is, the one company that's offering a pricey foundation, does it have a longevity to it? Because, you know, if it's a really long longevity, it still might be.
Advantageous?
Yeah.
I don't know what the typical lifespan of that is, but we can contact them and find out.
I'd like to know that.
Good question.
Yeah, and I guess the other question is, so say it's 8 years or 10 years, I have no clue, but what happens? You know what I mean, what happens?
Yeah, do they roll it up or, you know, yeah.
I mean, can it be patched? Can it, you know, if there's certain areas, you know what I mean, or do you have to replace the whole thing? I don't know.
It's a pour in place rubber,
Oh, it's
so
a
it
pour
goes down hot, and it spreads out, and it has to be painted after that.
But what if you have like one bad area?
I don't know.
Just 'cause, I don't know.
I have heard that districts that have used this product have actually had to add a mulch base over the top
Okay.
because it's still not,
Oh.
yeah. So there's also another product that I was made privy to this afternoon, an engineered wood mulch.
Oh.
And I'm asking for a quote on that also.
We have that at one of our, it's expensive, but it's not as expensive as, this pour in place is like
They don't deal with that, that company will not deal with anything else about that. Their kind of philosophy is they want it accessible for anyone who wheelchairs.
I understand.
But it's very, very expensive, and I actually, there's some local districts that actually used it and ended up having to put more mulch.
Do you know, Carrie, if either one of these vendors carries that or offers that as an option?
Here's one,
The engineered wood mulch,
the one that's had given us a rubber mulch,
this one?
quote, talked to him this afternoon, and he actually threw that out. So
Okay,
I asked for a quote, he's gonna review the quote and get it to me.
beautiful. So as we get more information, we'll share that, all these, you can just make the most
What's on our
informed
current
decision.
playground now?
What's that?
What's on our current playground? Rubber?
Rubber.
Tire. Carrie, the engineered wood mulch, could you get a sample, like a cup of it, so we could just feel it and see it? Help me.
What's the budget for this again?
Well, so we had talked about using some of the logging funds for this, the logging revenue came around 270, within 70,000. So, you know, putting a layer down, we wouldn't be able to afford that, it'd have to be in a project later on down the road. So, we never really set a budget, we looked at both quotes, one being, I would say, untouchable with the revenue stream that we have, and the other one doable.
Yeah, so one's basically 300 plus, one's 165-ish.
Yeah.
And then, so how soon would this get done?
So I had spoken to the gentleman, we could encumber the funds this year, the product, especially the equipment was where my biggest concern was with, we just talked about time and materials.
Right.
He said that order within the next 30 to 45 days, they could have it here by the end of June and installed over the summer.
Wow. Great.
And none of this playground equipment would be available to the handicapped, or is it?
No, it will be. The difference between what you see, so the design, I think, and I don't have it in front of me, has actually access points for handicap.
Yeah.
And the other one was just you have access right here.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. The other one is just.
See, there's like a side to ramp.
Yep.
Yeah. So I guess, I know we're not doing anything now, but what is the idea? Like so do we have to decide as a board and have a vote on something, or do you guys just choose it? I don't know.
So I'm interested in your feedback and in your support for either one, especially as it pertains to the survey. Sean?
I think I would love to get a, temperature check from the community, from the users, from the parents. What would they feel comfortable with, or which surface would they like their
The problem is, Sean, the
And then
problem is
also,
the difference in the price between them, so if you give that out to the public to decide, and they choose the one that's over $300,000, it's not gonna happen right away.
well,
They have to understand it's going, I'm just saying, they have to know all the facts.
So my suggestion would be, we talked about using the logging proceeds. We have not had any discussion of exceeding that amount for this particular purpose, which to me takes one of the vendors out of consideration because that's the only service that they offer. I think realistically, we examine the engineered rubber mulch, look at the price, cost out between that, traditional rubber mulch, wood mulch, and make a decision from there what the board is most comfortable with moving forward with. I know in many informal conversations that I've had with parents, it's come up at the last PTA meeting, that families are ecstatic and think that this is a wonderful use of those logging proceeds, and are thrilled that we're putting it toward an elementary playground that's accessible to, not only to our community, but we had asked both vendors to design it with students with special needs in mind, in particular, which shows in both designs. Although that's certainly something that we could consider because it's just a small sample of community feedback, certainly. That's the direction that I would advise that we move in.
And our insurance carrier doesn't lean one way or the other for the covering?
No.
No, he really doesn't. He talked to Kurt. And it is more that the equipment needs to be age appropriate.
Right.
So Mike, I have a question on, actually, if we're not considering, I don't have a question. I just want to make sure that, this one clearly shows that somebody in a wheelchair or that has difficulty walking doesn't have to wheel around in wood chips or rubber. It looks like they can go right on and have access to everything. I'm not really seeing that on this one, maybe it just doesn't show it, I don't know. Oh, yeah, it does, I see it, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That's all, I just wanna make sure that, because if we do go with the rubber or the wood, which I'm in favor of, you could see, you can't get how are you gonna get a wheelchair in there?
Right.
All right.
And these are just conceptual drawings as well. These were not final.
Oh, okay, yeah. So I just think it's imperative that the company that we choose knows that we need some type of solid surface access right up to it for.
Yep.
Okay, cool.
Anything else on this topic?
So next steps are what?
Next steps is we will get estimates to include the engineered rubber mulch.
engineered wood.
Wood.
I'm sorry, the engineered wood mulch, correct.
You might have just invented something new.
Right?
Engineered,
And we will see if they can provide samples that we can have available in my office or in Carrie's office if you want to stop in and take a look at it. And then I will seek consensus here to advise which direction to go. And then we will get updated timelines.
Do you have any,
and all of that.
Seth, you said you have it at Springbrook?
Yeah, we have all of these different products. I mean, I don't, the pour in place we just put in 2 summers ago, and so I don't know about the longevity of that, but I don't, the other stuff,
I have to go check it out.
fall on it a couple times, Ken.
Yes. Go
I mean,
get a wheelchair and put it in there.
Yeah.
See if it works.
All right. The next topic that I wanted to encourage an open conversation on is we were asked to look into what it would cost if we were to consider adding lighting to the tennis court project. if you recall, the original estimate that Carrie had presented to us a while ago was around $675,000 at the time when we were talking about revenue sources for that particular project. The actual estimates came in closer to 606, which you're all aware of. So being asked the question, Carrie had reached out to our architects to see ballpark what if we were to consider adding a couple lights. And as I wrote to you this past week, estimates range anywhere from about 130 to 165 for the, that was all inclusive. There would also be environmental studies, light pollution studies that would be necessary, some of the pre-work that's associated with that. This request for additional information did not hold up moving forward with what the board had already approved. So this would be in addition to, that could also go through a COLA. I don't hold a strong opinion on that one way or the other. Even at 130, it would exceed the conversation that this board had had as being a palatable bottom line for that particular project for use of the funds through the Kellogg funds that the board had approved. So I was asked to gather this information. I'm sharing it with you tonight. If you wish to have a conversation surrounding this, if this is something the board wants us to move forward and looking into even further, we can set aside time for a deeper conversation if you wish, or if you think it's something that we don't even want to consider because of the additional cost, that's okay too, but I want us to have an open conversation about that.
They have one piece to that too.
Sure,
One of the
Karen.
concerns they had too was they don't know where they would pull that electricity from for that size of lighting. So one of the comments was, as we're redoing the whole base, drainage and everything for the tennis courts, you could then add it at that point and look at it down the road. But at least if the infrastructure underneath would be there. They don't, there's nothing there currently. So they would have to.
So they would just put conduit under there, or would they run wires? It would just be empty conduit, or what would they put under there?
They would probably just run electrical and stub it off. That was just a comment by the architect, so.
I like that idea, at least to, in case we have the money later on, that the groundwork is there and we wouldn't have to take up sidewalks and such, that it would, if it was all laid out so that the electrical can be run.
Is there a
They
cost?
continue to study now to kind of keep it, keep it going, and then it doesn't slow the project down.
And is there a cost just to do that?
No, I don't think so.
Just
I mean, they just need
to
some
lay
time
and
to
run
do it.
conduit?
Of course. Yeah, for the.
Yeah, to put the
I
line
get some cost.
stub it up.
But it would
They
be
just need to study
minimal.
to see, first of all, where they're gonna pull it from.
Okay.
And that's really, they didn't, my question back to them was, how long would this take, or would it slow the current project down that
Right.
we're looking at? They said absolutely.
It would.
You gotta do a secret, yeah, because you gotta do a light study.
Just put the conduit in?
No, not the conduit, no, the lights themselves.
Okay, so no, we were just asking,
No, so they can start that process and say, okay, so once everything gets ripped up, then we'll figure out where to put the conduit and lay it in there. No, it's not gonna cost us any more to do that study, as far as, that's not what they study.
No, to actually do the work.
to
To
do
do
the
the work,
conduit.
yes.
Yes, we, and
How
we
That's
found
what-
how much
Yes.
just to put the conduit, stub it up? How much do we
I don't
know?
So
Okay,
we
okay.
can go back though, Kim, that's
Yeah.
a good suggestion, as Lucy had supported,
I can get
and
an
ask for an estimate just on what it would cost to lay a foundation for that work and for
Yeah,
consideration.
I don't know what, as far as money you could swap and whatever, but there's gonna be money left over from the playground. Right? Or this one, this one, if you go with this one, you're gonna have like $85,000 left from the playground.
Potentially.
Well, yeah, right, I understand, no, I
These are not final
understand.
numbers
I
yet.
understand,
No, I
But,
understand what you're saying.
yeah,
Well, and I don't know what can get where, I have no clue.
if you want us to move forward with at least getting a cost estimate
Sure.
on what it would cost to prepare the site for an easy addition in the future, whether that be in a future project,
Right.
whether that be additional proceeds,
Right.
whatever an additional funding source it could be, we can certainly request that.
I think that's a
As long
great
as it's
idea.
reasonable, yeah.
I'll go with that.
I'll contact her.
And we'll run it back by the board before committing to anything.
Sounds good.
Yes?
Thank you.
Sean, James?
Wouldn't you wanna know what the seeker report's gonna be before you chose to spend the money on something that may or may not happen?
Absolutely. And that's the part Carrie said we can move forward on at no cost. The environmental impact studies.
Good point.
But that's a good point. We need to be sensitive of the timing of that, but even before we commit to additional costs. But in the meantime, we can get those estimates so we have that information when we're ready to do that. Anything else? All right, thank you for that. Next, you're all aware of the mask updates to require mask in schools based on the communication that I shared the other day. Effective this Wednesday, the district will be shifting to a mask optional status. We also received today a letter from the Delaware County Department of Health, Delaware County Public Health, indicating that they do support the CDC recommendation to lift mask requirements in schools in areas designated as low or medium risk. Delaware County is currently designated on the CDC website as an area of low risk. And then in the second paragraph, it goes on to say that it is the decision of each individual school district to make changes to their mask policies. So what we're lacking at this point is follow-up from the New York State Department of Health. I anticipated we would have received that today, and we did not. There we will have details. I do not have any reason to believe that the details will prevent us from moving to mask optional. As of Wednesday, we will be a mask optional district. What the details will inform is if we have a positive case and we have students or staff who are identified to quarantine and they're participating in our test to stay. When they are still coming to school, which is our priority, participating in test to stay while they're in that 5-day quarantine period, they will likely need to resume wearing masks during that time. So there could be those types of details and nuances that we will need to update in our reopening plan to memorialize that. I'm not hearing any other changes to any other mitigation protocols. So we're not changing our current practices for social distancing, for cleaning protocols, our test to stay program, and provision of test kits. That all stays the course. I anticipate that this will certainly apply to any before and after school activities, athletics. The CDC also made similar recommendations to lift mask mandates on buses. I've received a number of questions about transportation, today in particular. And I also have no reason to believe that that will be any different. Another question I received was, do I anticipate that there will be differentiation between the vaccinated and the unvaccinated? Will districts be asked to require unvaccinated individuals to wear masks? I'm not hearing that either. I can't imagine that we would engage in that type of practice that would further divide the vaccinated from the unvaccinated based on personal choice. So I just wanted to provide that commentary, and also that the letter from Public Health in Delaware County is supportive of that. Any questions on that? Certainly as I get more details from the New York State Department of Health, I'll turn those just as quick as they come in.
So, yes, they still have to wear them on a bus?
No.
No, they're gone,
No,
oh,
well,
okay.
that's the CDC's
Optional.
recommendation. New York State Department of Health has not ruled on transportation yet officially yet. I anticipate that it will follow suit based on the CDC recommendation.
Thank you.
Any other questions on that topic? Okay, almost there, guys. Also in your folders, you will find a memo to Board of Education members from DCMO Boces. This is the annual notice of not only their annual meeting, but a deadline to submit any nomination forms. If we have any board members at Delaware Academy who are also seeking concurrent nomination to serve a term on the Boces board. So if there's anybody who is interested in also serving at that level, this is all the information that we need with deadlines included. If you have specific questions about this, Perry Dewey will be here next month, but we can also get those answered for you in the meantime if anybody is interested. And when do you need to know that by? I want to say March 23rd, yes, is the deadline to submit a nomination form. March 23rd. And then when we vote at our April 20th meeting on the Boces administrative budget, that's also, if you recall, when we vote on any candidates, any new candidates for the Boces board. I think it would be pretty cool to have a DA person on that board, just saying.
We did in the past.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. And then finally, I just wanted to bring to the, well, I don't need to bring to the board's attention because our board was copied on a few emails that came from 2 parents and a student athlete when we played Moravia High School in our Varsity girls basketball game the other night. There were concerns and feedback regarding the behavior of some students in our student section. There were concerns that our dog pound student section were targeting specific athletes on the other team, calling them by number, calling them by name, and making comments regarding their athletic skills. And you've all read the emails. So let me just make a few statements. We are, Delaware Academy, we take pride in being the top academically in our region. We take pride in being the top athletically in our region, as you heard from the successes that Mr. Ferrara just shared. We also must take pride in being the top in sportsmanship and in character, whether we are home or on the road or anywhere. You're wearing anything that says Delaware Academy, you're representing. That remains our expectation. So I responded on behalf of the district and the board to these parents, assuring them that I'd be looking into this, which I did majority of my day today. I've interviewed adults and parents who are at that game, who are sitting in close enough proximity to have overheard and substantiate what is being written in these emails. I interviewed about 8 students today, this afternoon, and I read them parts of the emails, asking them specifically about what was said and what they heard. And I will tell you that the students took ownership of this. They said, yeah, Mrs. Zimmerman, we said that. Yes, no, Mrs. Zimmerman, we really didn't say that, but I can understand how it could have been interpreted that way. So we talked for an entire period, had a great conversation, not only on what was contained in the emails, but also on how that could be interpreted. If that was your sister, if that was your girlfriend, if that was your cousin. And they named a few of the other athletes, and they suggested writing a letter of apology. They also suggested working as a class to come up with some rules of engagement moving forward for our student section. Make no mistake about it, we do have the best student section that I've ever experienced. These students show up, they show up to support our student athletes, they engage in just a lot of what I would expect out of a student section. But where we cross the line is anything that begins to target any individual students. I also informed these students that should that behavior be observed to continue, where we are calling students by number or by name on either time, or on either team, that they will be asked to leave the student section and to leave the game. I've also met with Mr. Farrar and Mr. Rolfe on this topic, informing them that that's my expectation, that students are clearly over the line and are targeting any students in particular. That's not what we're about at DA. But I was very pleased overall to hear these students take responsibility and engage in part of the solution moving forward. I've encouraged them to attend the game tomorrow night to continue to support our girls varsity team, and I expect that we will have a great student section absent of that type of behavior. So I just wanted to share that with all of you because you were copied on those emails, and that's how I brought resolution to that today. Questions, comments?
I was just going to comment, I believe it's also a league rule that identifying players by name or number is forbidden, and noisemakers too, and there was a game where there was a kind of a noisemaker. So we really, to follow the league rules too.
Mrs. Zimmerman? Yes,
May I?
absolutely.
I spoke often with Mrs. Zimmerman about this weekend and a little more today. I think it was handled excellently as she met with the students, and I was glad to hear they took ownership. I also had an opportunity to meet with the coaches who are present for each other a majority of the time, and it shouldn't be mistaken that it's not an isolated incident. Some of the coaches were upset with what they saw at the MAC championship games from our student section. And I'm excited to work with whatever group of students it is that's going to help us. I want it to be student-driven. I want to help oversee whoever's going to make these rules of sportsmanship and etiquette as it relates to our gymnasium. I believe in my heart, if I had to prioritize what I've been aiming for over the last 12 years, the most important priority that I could have for our athletes is that they grow up to be good human beings and have character. Their second pursuit should be their academic endeavors, and winning is third. We do take pride in the fact that we win often. That is a consolation prize to everything that happens before. That's all I want to say.
Thank you.
I think one more thing on that.
Yeah, go ahead, Seth.
Important to note though that while agreeing with everything that has been said here, just so the board knows, the account from the parent is not to be taken at face value, or the student. There are certainly interpretations and different ways things were portrayed or received that I think is part of the explanation that you engaged in today. I think that was good and productive, because anything at face value is just that, at face value. I think everybody that's been in situations like this realizes that usually the truth is somewhere in between what people are saying and hearing and thinking, and that's kind of what I think you figured out today. So I appreciate the time you put into it, but everybody should know it's not exactly how that was written. So it's important.
Thank you. Anything else on what? All right, that's all I had for my update.
Well, thank you very much. Move on to board committee reports. Dale Kellogg.
Still have not met, hopefully we'll meet soon.
I believe we have
I have
identified.
nomination, I have the nomination to Town Franklin, they meet tomorrow night.
Yes, wonderful. Athletic committee?
Yeah, so we met 2 weeks, well, not even quite 2 weeks ago, and discussed the issue, well, and it's a good issue. There's a lot of people, a lot of kids interested in baseball and in tennis and in softball this spring. And so there was a conversation about, did we need to have modified not only modified in varsity, but JV as well for baseball, tennis, softball. I think we came to pretty good resolutions with having more in-depth conversations at another level of interest meetings to determine if that interest was just, I signed up and or am I willing to, do I really want to play? And I don't know if those have taken place yet to determine whether where we are.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet, but there are a number of factors that were considered. We looked also outside of DA and spoke with other coaches as well about what they anticipate being able to field. We certainly don't want to put rookie players, a whole team of rookie players on the field if they could risk injury just because of the disparity in skill levels. So we are still sorting that out, but yeah, thrilled with the turnout.
Yeah, but don't we also,
Go ahead.
don't we also have to know if the other schools we're playing have those teams?
We did look into
That's
that.
right.
There are, in the MAC, there are some teams that have JV softball, JV baseball, not a lot. And the other issue though is what Kelly's saying is some of it tends to be fairly competitive. So you would want to make sure your team is at a certain level.
Right.
And we weren't sure of that. So we're gonna kind of sort through it because it's involved, there's uniforms, hiring coaches, all that would have to happen really quickly. Practice time, practice space, those sorts of things that were being sorted out. So I think it was just determining what the real interest level was before we committed to the next step with that. And then I think we talked about issues with parents or community members addressing coaches right after games and people having opinions about situations in games and what was our procedure and process. And while we don't have a policy, I think it's worth sort of reminding all parents, and the coaches could do this, is that it really is best to think about kind of a 24-hour rule before you express concerns. A lot of the times people reframe their concerns, what seems to be really important and really obvious right then and there, may be reframed and restated the next day in a more calm and professional and adult way versus sort of just jumping right in the middle of something, in the middle of a game or right at the end. So I think that is a really good policy, or really good practice, I should say, because it's not going to be a policy, but
Well, we talked about maybe adding into the code of conduct that the parents and the student athletes sign. That would be a tangible thing.
Yeah, I have to look at that again. I have that policy, the code of conduct we have.
Well, I think it would have to be amended.
Yes, we should just check in and see if there's anything that gets near that language.
Yep.
I meant to try to do that, but I would like to get my hands on a copy of that. I think that was most everything, Lucy. Is there anything else from that meeting?
We also talked about the varsity club and their duties, and it will be something that we will be looking into in the future, because that's a negotiated thing, but it opened my eyes about how it's expanded to be a marketing, Facebook, Twitter type element, and then the normal pep rally type things. It encompasses a lot more than I thought.
We also discussed all the proceeds that had been lost due to COVID.
Yeah,
Because
that's
of
right.
opportunities to not have concessions, opportunities to not do a number of things from a fundraising perspective that we've done in previous years,
Right.
so.
And a little bit, we spoke about how Varsity thinks this might be our fundraiser, but another teacher has another thing. Maybe there has to be a little bit more cohesiveness of
Communication and clarity.
what are hands off for the varsity and the varsity club who can take over.
Lisa, could you please just note that, to have that athletic code of conduct for our next athletic committee meeting?
Yeah.
That would be good.
That's a good place to start.
And Lucy, I texted you today, are you okay with not meeting on Wednesday just because we just met?
Yeah, that would be fine. I was
Okay.
waiting to see what happened with this,
Okay.
and, yeah.
So I think we've worked our way through this, right?
Lisa, will you send an email to
Yep.
the committee, just that we're canceling that?
Okay.
Great.
Do you have another date in mind, or do you?
I think we
Just
have one.
No,
next
you don't have to
time.
meet
Yeah.
right now.
No, I mean, do you have another, you're not meeting Wednesday, but are you gonna meet
Next
prior
meeting,
to
No,
the?
just our
Just the
regular
regular
schedule.
one, okay.
We'll be fine.
there's an April 2nd,
It's coming up in the.
Thank you for clarifying.
Board liaison?
There was no meeting.
Capital project.
So we met, we went over the project that we just had, some of the punch list materials and where that stands. We talked to the architect, I believe it's the architect, and looking at the next project that we're working on putting together, discussing possibilities of bringing the technology wing back up to date with new equipment and opening up possibilities for the students to have different career paths in that direction. We went over a lot of different areas for the next project, and I believe we're gonna try to get a list together that to present to the full board in the near future, so everyone can see it's not super glamorous, but it's things that need to be done, not more of a need to than a want to, so.
Pretty much it.
So we'll meet as a capital project committee one more time to delineate, we talked about both this next project, the $3.5 to $4 million project, and then the one after that, based on feedback from the architects. They came and did a walkthrough with us, and they will be presenting some more discrete cost estimates associated with the totality of that. So we will meet to review that as a capital project committee one more time, and then we will be asking to schedule a special board meeting with the sole purpose of starting to talk about the next capital project or projects with the entire board.
That's a good idea. Okay, finance.
Well, we had a brief meeting because Kerry went out and broke his wrist.
We met without the finance
The
guy.
shoulder wasn't enough.
No. Stay the same arm.
Yes. So it was brief, right? I think, Tammy, what else did we do? And we didn't have any numbers that we did.
We looked briefly at the state aid run, so we did a quick summary of that. Basically what preparing for what Carrie presented tonight. Talked a little bit about staffing, and capital projects. We reviewed what capital projects had gone over.
Yeah.
From the finance perspective.
Little playground.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't much more than that. A policy committee did not meet. Technology?
I think we have not met, but we have a meeting scheduled, we have one coming up. Yeah.
Speaking of policy.
Yeah. So we are going to do the first and the third reading of policy number 76, which is the data security and privacy policy, and policy number 77, which is the parents' Bill of Rights for data security and privacy policy. Both of those are in the folders, just what you saw at the last meeting. Since there aren't any changes or necessary updates, and it is a policy that we are required to have, we are gonna jump to a final reading and adoption. So if I could get a motion, please, to adopt policy number 76, data security and privacy policy, and number 77, parents' bill of rights for data security and privacy policy. And a second?
One second.
James, thank you. Any questions or comments? It's all pretty straightforward. Thank you, Luke, for bringing that to our attention. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, and that motion is carried. We have no old business or new business. A motion, please, to accept a donation in the amount of $100 from St. John's Episcopal Church for use in the backpack program.
So moved.
Lucy, thank you. And a second?
Second.
Any questions or comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? Okay, the motion is carried. Next, a motion, please, to accept a donation in the amount of $17,000 from the HealthGuard Renfro Foundation to be used to help fund the bus garage expansion of an additional parking lane, which we saw several times this evening, to help fund the needs of the FFA, and $500 to be redirected to host a staff party at the end of the year.
Jeez,
Woohoo!
it's my kind of foundation. Put in an application.
Considered staff, right?
So this is also, I believe what Greg or Carrie had referred to earlier is the donation that further helped secure the additional maple syrup processing once we got that tank through that grant that Ellie had wrote for us. This further outfitted the pad, the house that it's housed in, and all the necessary supplies surrounding that as well. So this is huge. And also I just want to comment, Greg Verspor also played a huge role in this, in helping to secure this grant and helping do kind of the legwork alongside with Ellie. So huge thank you to Greg for your work and your time that you put into advocating for this and making sure that this came to fruition.
Oh, this is very generous.
Mhm.
Very generous. Motion, please? And Kim.
Second.
Thank you. Any questions or comments?
I Googled this foundation because I just never heard of them before, and there really wasn't that much information on the internet about them. I guess I'm overwhelmed that they're willing to give the schools that kind of money, but I also, I guess, reading too many newspapers, I'm thinking, now, are we finding out that they are such a group that we really don't want to take their money, you know? And so I couldn't really get a sense of.
We have an employee who is well connected to this foundation, who also served as a conduit to secure this. And Greg, correct me if I'm wrong, but they routinely donate to the district annually. I even received a phone call from this employee saying, we have this money, what are your thoughts on this? And I kind of redirected it that way. And then Greg kind of picked up the reins from there. So it is reputable, can be trusted.
We're not going to be blindsided. Yeah, I ascertained as much when I saw who the chairperson of the foundation was, and I thought, okay, now I understand.
Sure.
But I had never heard of it before.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Okay, the motion is carried. Move on to public comments. Board of Education welcomes comments and questions during this session, but they will not respond to these comments or questions at this time. Items or issues you wish the board to consider for action or discussion may be placed on the board agenda by contacting the district clerk or superintendent 1 week prior to the board meeting. And I don't believe we've had any public speak in, so. Okay, board comments. And I think I promised that this time I would start with Sean.
I'll pass.
Okay. James.
I'm passing as well.
Lucy, don't let me down.
No, well, of course, I can't go without saying, reiterating what Superintendent Zimmerman said about Pete Hannigan. Big gap for our school, coupled with the meeting before with Mrs. Avila. Now we're talking about huge gap and number of years of service to our school in many ways. Of course, we wish him a happy retirement, but he will definitely be sorely missed.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so well said, Lucy. I wish he was here that we could, I hope he comes to a meeting or something where we could.
We're having a party apparently.
Well, yeah, I didn't want to ask, what's the portion of the 17 grand for the party versus the bus lane, Craig? I didn't see any pavement on the bus lane yet.
Project's not done.
Is he gonna be paved? What? Is he gonna have pavement?
That's what we're.
We don't know?
We don't.
Okay.
They're gonna be paving next to it.
Right.
Still some.
Might
Yes,
say.
Good idea.
yeah, it might, right.
Good idea. Yeah, so I appreciate the information from the presentation tonight that we got. That was all really a good refresher. And I wanted to say, I think that our approach with the mask optional is well thought through, and I guess everybody's happy because no one came to the meeting tonight to talk to us about that. I can imagine it would be. And lastly, good job on your first report, Crystal. Out there, very concise. Well done.
I just want to give kudos to like the transportation department, especially the bus drivers. I'll tell you what, I've worked in several different school districts, and many of them I would not put my own child on the bus. This district is so different. I mean, I don't know, it's just, it's like a family, bus drivers. You know, they're just incredible. They're just incredible people, and just, I have no worries at all putting my child on a bus here. And it's just, it's the people that are the bus drivers and the whole department. It's great. Yeah.
Do you know one thing to add on to that? It's so true. At the games, your drivers always stay and watch the games. They get into
They
it.
do.
At the time, I sit
They do.
next to one of the
They do.
drivers, and they know the other teams, they know the players. It's really cool that they don't just sit in the bus and read a book. They're into it. It makes a
And
difference.
some are following regardless.
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And some people ride on the bus whether they drove it or not. So no, that is so true. That's well
Yeah,
said.
that's great.
That's well said.
Good point.
Abby.
I also wanted to reflect on the transportation stuff. You kind of stole my spotlight with what I was going to say. Like being on a sports team and knowing like how many hours get put on with those drivers driving us everywhere. And like we appreciate them so much, and we love when they come to our games and we get off the bus and they always say good luck to each and every one of us, and like whether it's Lynn, Carrie, Dale, yes, we know all of them by name. Like you say that you guys are a team, but like we feel like we have like a relationship with them too. It's true. Because they always help us out. And then not to, what's the word? Downgrade the importance of the sportsmanship, but to shed a little bit of positive light. For the girls, Delhi did get the sportsmanship award, tied with Unitigo for the MAC, so that was cool. So that's like a little bit of positivity. You know what's going on. A lot of talk about the masks that I've heard from students. There's a lot. I actually heard from both sides, so that's interesting.
What have you heard of?
Ooh, put me on the spot. Well, a lot of students are really happy. I know a lot of my friends are, and personally, I really am. There's also been a question about whether we're still gonna have to wear them for sports. Obviously, if we don't have to wear them in school, then in practices, we wouldn't have to wear them, but probably meaning like away competitions, you know, I guess that would depend on that school, if we would still have to wear them in games. I've heard students say that maybe it's not a good idea to get rid of the mask, but I guess we never really have gotten rid of the mask, so we don't know. So I guess we'll find out, right? And yeah, the last thing is the game tomorrow. So
Yeah.
if you can come, that would be super cool.
Yeah.
If not, I'm sure it will be streamed online. That's all I have.
And good luck to
Yes,
the
thank
team
you.
tomorrow. You've come a long way, you've worked hard for this, so.
Yeah. Especially all 6 of us seniors, we've been playing together for 8 years.
It's a big senior squad this year.
Yeah, we
Awesome.
literally have been playing with each other. We used to go to the little kid basketball clinics with Mr. Bruce. We were those kids once, and now we are the big goons teaching the younger kids. That's what we're called, so that's cool. It's like very community feel, so.
Awesome.
Great, thank you. We do have quite a few upcoming meetings. We have 2 budget workshops, Monday, March 14th and Monday, March 21st. Both of those at 5 o'clock here in the High School Media Library Center. Our next regular Board of Education meeting is Monday, March 28th. In the High School Media Library Center, it is anticipated that the board will convene an executive session at 5 p.m. and return to open session at 6 p.m. The deadline for items to be placed on the board agenda is the Tuesday prior to each Board of Education meeting. If you have any questions, please contact the district clerk at 607-746-1306. And I will take a motion to enter into executive session to discuss contracts and discuss matters regarding personnel with no action to be taken. So, Kim, and a second? James, thank you.
Just a question on the meeting date, something you said, it said, the next one is, oh, it's today, never mind. It's fine.